Welcome to Spoiler Room. Today we got Cole in the room. Hello, Cole.
What's up? How's it going?
Good. You get to the chopper, and then we have Dawn, the diva of the Spoiler Room. Yeah, hi, Dawn.
Wow.
Making us regret this.
The Terminator got a tongue, and then we got Hawkeye. We got Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's not a tumor. It's my hair. It parts wrong. And then we have Mr. Scotty D. Hello, Scotty D.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Get to the party.
My
And
God,
then
is that what we sound like?
and we have Tony. We've got Tiger Dude. Hello, Tiger Dude.
Hello, Mr. What's nigga? How you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's the Ice Age.
Oh, you've been terminated. And welcome, yes, we are talking Terminator Genisys tonight in the spoiler room. If you hadn't guessed, my horrible Arnold impression. Yes, we have Cole, Don, Paul, Scott, and Tony in the room to talk about this reboot fifth film in the franchise. And here in the summary, according to IMDb, John Connor sends Kyle Reese back in time to protect Sarah Connor, but when he arrives in 1984, nothing is as he expected it to be. Yeah, that's a good summary of it. It's about as deep as this movie goes. Anyway, just kidding.
Hey,
So,
if anybody can sum up this movie in like just a few seconds, I think they deserve a prize, like a cash prize.
In all honesty, yes. Now, yes, this is the reboot. We've had 4 films, and they decided, we need a fresh start, if you will. So we have it finally here. People have talked about it for a long time, and we're going to talk about it tonight. And first, I want to get Paul. Paul, Terminator Genisys, when it was done, as we do as always, impression.
I liked it less than I really was expecting to like it, but I still enjoyed it. And I knew this was going to happen because it's like all of my friends were like, "Oh, this movie is junk. This movie is junk. You're going to watch that piece of junk?" And I'm like, "Yes, because it's a great movie, right?" And then when I watched it, it was like, okay. And everyone else was like, "Oh, this is a great movie. This is the greatest movie ever created." And I'm like, "See, I told you."
I was right.
Yeah.
I'm living a lie.
But that said, when I watched it the second time, I did enjoy it a lot.
Wait, second time?
What?
I watched it. I had to watch it in 3D just to see if it made a difference.
Oh, okay. I get
All right.
it. All right,
Just
we'll
so
let,
yeah, okay, Mr. Disposable Income.
well, if MoviePass would have let me do it twice, I probably would have gone too. So.
What was it? I skipped laundry day.
Oh, there you
There we
go. And Tony, what about you, sir? When the credits rolled, how did you feel about Terminator Genisys?
Well, yeah, I'm sure as a lot of people, I thought this was going to be just one of the absolute pieces of garbage 2015 has to offer. I was really dreading seeing this movie, but to my surprise, this movie was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I actually thought it was a pretty good movie. I really enjoyed the movie overall. You know, as far as expectations go, it was definitely not what I expected. It did not suck, surprisingly, to me.
Awesome. And Cole, initial impressions with this film?
Yeah, man. I really loved it. Actually, it was a huge surprise. And full disclosure, this was my first IMAX movie, and I am going again in 2D just to kind of get a better perception of how it plays without all the bells and whistles. But I really liked it. I went into it Well, here the other thing is, I've never seen a bad Terminator movie. That's my thing too. I like all four of them.
Hmm.
I think that Salvation did a really wise thing in eliminating the time travel element because you can
Yeah.
only do too much before it all gets dissolved. But the fans hated that, so here we are with the necessity of a time travel element. There was no way for them not to do it. And I really liked the whole Back to the Future 2 element of it. This is batshit crazy. Characters running back and forth and trying to fix the future and the past and all of that I really enjoyed. And in closing, I think there's something, with Arnold's return, I think there was a level of quality that people were expecting. But I think what those people maybe, or what some of those people, obviously not all, don't really appreciate is that the first two movies, the awesome ones, were Jim Cameron's movies, not Schwarzenegger's movies. And you can see that even in the Alien series. I mean, the Alien series was never able to really recover after Cameron left. So this to me is a light years better than 3. Definitely better than 4, although in the same universe. I like both of those about the same. And in terms of, following up the second, which is really all you can hope to do, I think it worked for me. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Good to hear. And Dawn, what about you? Initial impressions. We'll get into the particulars, but just your kind of overall feeling after the movie was over.
Well, as is my habit, I try to avoid anything. I try to avoid spoilers. Yes, big time. To the point that I hadn't even watched the trailers, nothing going into this.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was a surprise to me about John Connor. That was a pleasant surprise.
Yay!
Yay! Certainly didn't help the predictability of the movie, but I had only just recently, I think Thursday night. I had only just Thursday night watched Terminator Salvation.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time. So, because I just hadn't heard good things about it. So going from that one to Genisys, I put them about the same level. Genisys is maybe a little bit better.
Yeah.
I didn't like 3, Rise of the Machines. I didn't like that one at all.
I think Cole's the only one that's liked 3 in the world.
What?
I liked it.
But
Paul says he liked it.
Yeah.
Paul says he liked the movie.
Okay.
Overall,
Personally, I thought it was the worst too, but okay.
Overall, I thought the movie was okay. I thought it was. I just keep going back and forth on it because I haven't processed it enough yet. I mean, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is actually a lot going on in this film, surprisingly, and yet nothing. So it's weird paradigm that they have a lot yet not a lot. So, but we'll get to that a little bit. And Scott, what about you, sir?
I gotta tell you, and I think that when I see it more, maybe maybe my opinion will shift a bit. I saw this movie I got out of this movie a little more than 24 hours before we're recording this.
Oh wow!
And I saw it last night, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what I just saw. It's the closest, and I know we're going to get into the particulars in a bit, but here's the closest thing I can sum up like this. At least for the first, say, half to two-thirds of the movie, what it felt like was that if they had rebooted the Terminator series in the 90s with Jean-Claude as one of those crazy Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, one of those crazy Jean-Claude Van Damme action movies, I think it would have had about the same tone as like the first half to two-thirds of this movie. Now, if you know me, that is not an insult.
No.
I love those movies. Now, I didn't love this movie, but what I did like was how absolutely nuts it was, and the end didn't quite do what the other bit did for me, but I will get into that. I was kind of between it. I was kind of It's geez, you can just tell. I like have these like conflicting emotions of like part of me wanted to say like say this is the stupidest movie ever. I feel insulted. And then the other half of me was saying, this is the stupidest movie ever, man. Sit back and enjoy the ride, you know? So
Yeah.
I didn't dislike it, but I'm not sure. I'm hoping that they were laughing with me instead of laughing at me.
One can hope.
Yeah.
And for me, for Terminator Genisys, I mean, I thought it was all right, but Phil Collins going back in time to '84 to get Peter Gabriel, just so that they can all play in the band. You know that. Oh wait.
Wow.
Sorry, wrong Genisys. Wrong Genisys.
And then Steve Hackett and Tony Banks are all there like, something has changed.
But,
Visibly touched reference.
sorry. Couldn't help myself. I saw the trailer and I did a review and I had my reservations about it, and even the name of it, I'm like, really? And I will say, being such a devout Terminator 2 fan, and I am. I'm a fanatic for that film. That's one of those. I was telling Don last night when at the fireworks that for me, Terminator 2 is one of those fixed point in time films. One of those films that had just struck me as a chord. You know, I got the posters, I got the book of the script, I got the different VHS. Yes, that's how old I am. Different VHS copies of it. You know, so the sequels afterwards have been pretty lackluster to me. 3, I really didn't like. Salvation, I had issues with, though I thought the effort was okay. Though I would have liked to see R. This one, I actually came out of it going, I don't hate it as much as I thought I would. And in fact, I found some of it entertaining, some of it ridiculous, some of it still was hard to swallow. But on the whole, I don't think the film is as horrible as many are making it out to be.
Yay.
Yeah.
That blurb is going on the poster. Not as horrible as many are making it out to be.
well, no, because the thing is, and one of the reasons why is that Terminator 2 struck a chord with me. You don't get many films like that. That combination of action and depth, and seriousness and darkness. I mean, it does occasionally happen, but for me, Terminator 2 was one of those films you don't get that often, and you're not going to strike the exact oil twice with that, especially within the same franchise, because you risk either having people complain that you're treading on territory that's already been there, or just continuously comparison. So I turned my brain off that and tried not to compare it to Terminator 1 and 2, because both those films struck a chord with me, especially 2. And this film, I came out of it going, yeah, most of it, I think they did a decent job. It's about how I felt coming out of Star Trek when they rebooted Star Trek. It was like, for what they had and what they were trying to do, they did all right. For me, now one of the things I want to start with first is their trip to Nostalgia Land. And Dawn and I we're starting to have a debate on this, and I'm going to be probably in the minority. But I told her that I actually enjoyed the film more when they stopped trying to do the replication and the repeat of some of the scenes from the originals. So that's me. I actually enjoyed it more when they got back more into their original. Okay, this is the story that we're actually going to tell. I didn't care for the spoiler, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But just the nostalgia part, that first act, which is basically an amalgamation of the first 2 films, yet varied. How'd you feel about those, Tony? Let's start with you. How'd you feel about those scenes that were the same yet different?
Like the scenes that they replicated from the original movies?
Yeah, where they had the 84 where I need your sunglasses, your jacket, and your boots, or whatever.
Yeah,
your boots, your pants, and your coat. Give me your clothes, and then
Give them to me.
And then the whole Reese in the department store kind of replicated scene. And then they're throwing the T-1000 in there early, and yeah, that it's basically a mashup of the first two films in that first act.
Well, as far as the replicas, I actually really, really liked what they replicated from the original film, especially that scene where old Arnold and like old Arnold and the Arnold from the original Terminator film. Like, I really loved how you see both of them on screen, and they have like a 2 minute, they have like a little hand-to-hand combat with each other. Their fight. I thought that was really interesting, and the T-1000 one, I thought they could have explored a little more with the T-1000, but that part of the movie, I'm all like, that was all right for how they explored it. And as far as Jai Courtney goes as Kyle Reese, I'm still kind of thinking about it as we're doing this. I'll go ahead and say that he didn't do too bad of a job. I think he was overall. I'll say he was overall decent as Kyle Reese.
Yeah, I'll give my opinion on Reese first. I want to get Dawn, since you brought it up. I want to bring Dawn next. And Dawn, the parts where they were playing for the nostalgia and trying to work it into the original timeline, yet not. How'd you feel about that first act?
I didn't mind it. I'm glad that if they were going to go back and replicate it, they did it as closely as they possibly could.
Yeah.
I appreciated that a lot. I mean, it was down to the detail on that, and I appreciated that. If they were going to replicate it, they replicated it well. But if, obviously that was their goal. Was it necessary? Not strictly speaking, no. It was gratuitous, no doubt. But they still had to set it up because he was still going to 1984, and he was still, certain events were still going to happen. It didn't need to necessarily happen exactly that way, but that's what happened when he went in the original movie, so it would make sense that it would replicate again. And as far as Kyle Reese goes, or Jai Courtney goes, he was a very pretty boy. He looked very, very healthy for a character who was supposed to have grown up post-apocalypse, starving, survivor.
So clean shaven? Wow.
So he looked like a nice, clean-cut, well-fed soldier that does his gym workout every day in a nice, Adventure 212 or Goldberg style gym every day. His vitamin and his nutrition supplements, and that's how I envision Kyle Reese,
Hey,
survivor.
Hey, I have to ask Don. Do you think Jai Courtney would have worked better in Magic Mike XXL?
I haven't seen the Magic Mike's movies.
Dawn, that's not Dawn's type of film, I don't think. Maybe.
No. No, but I mean, that was why. This is why Michael Biehn worked so good, so well in the role. He was scrawny. He did not look healthy. He was wiry. I mean, his physical appearance was extremely believable as a soldier, as a survivor, as somebody who did things on the fly and adapted because you had to. You grew up eating whatever you could find scraped off the streets in a dead world.
He had that stare.
He did, yeah, he did. And Jai Courtney just, it's not that he did a bad job. He did a good job for what he was doing, but he is a very pretty boy.
Yes, that's true. He was. And Cole, what about you? That first act of nostalgia, basically.
Cole or Paul? I'm sorry.
Cole.
Oh, good. I'm having. Sorry. Sounds similar. Well, I mean, I agree with what Don was saying for sure, and I see that somebody just put a little note on our screen here about Sam Worthington.
Yeah.
And I do have to say that in terms of Jai Courtney, man, he's one of the reasons I didn't want to see this. I recently did a Die Hard marathon just for the
Oh, yeah.
and the first 4 films are so consistently solid, and really, I think that Jai Courtney, and I'm a director and I hope to have a career, and I rarely say negative things about anybody, but he is the main reason that movie does not work. He is in full-on Sam Worthington-like mode where he's almost characterless. Now, in stark composition, I thought he did great here. If I compare him to Michael Biehn, it all falls apart. But I actually think he did really good. I like, actually, in terms of, to go back to your question, I'm sorry, the references to the first 2 films, specifically the first film, really, I thought were great. I thought they were great how they didn't try and mimic it right down to the exaggerate. I mean, you didn't have somebody trying to do a Bill Paxton impersonation, for instance.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, these were definitely within the same universe, and it really, all that stuff clicked for me. I really liked all the references. I'm really, the more I talk about it actually tonight, I thought I was going to be in hostile territory on this podcast. I really did, but the more we're talking about it, the more I actually like it. I really, my girlfriend and I have been talking about it for 4 days straight, and we like it more and more. And no, short story long, the references were great. I loved them. They worked for me.
Cool. And Scott, what about you, sir?
Touching on both points, the references, I was okay with it. I mean, I think there was a part of me for a moment that said, like, they should have tried to actually meld the footage with the original film. But you know what? Then I thought, you know what? Let's not worry about what a film isn't. Let's worry about what a film is. That's how I try to view each film I look at. Sometimes I succeed. Sometimes I fail my own standards. And but yeah, always like judge a film based on what it is, not what it isn't. And I looked at it and I said, you know, I get it because it is an alternate timeline. So I didn't even mind that things were of course, most of us here probably know the original Terminator by heart.
Yes.
And you know, so I mean, like, we know every, you know, line of dialogue, every mannerism and stuff. We know that guy that was trying to start his car curses a lot more than he does in a PG-13 movie. But you know what? I looked at it and like, okay, it's an alternate timeline. That's fine. I don't care. They did a decent job, and I'm not really gonna sweat that much. I can see where that's really gonna piss off a lot of purists, that whole notion of what they do. But honestly, I think the whole plot's gonna piss off a lot of the purists. So that doesn't really. So you know, add it to the fire. But Jai Courtney, I'm glad Cole brought it up because I've and I think I've been probably a little too in some of my written reviews in the past. I've probably been a little too mean to him. But I always just keep on looking like, who the hell is this guy's agent? I want his agent. God, he's like, because he always gets put in these really plum roles, and despite having never really proven himself on screen. Now, I admit I never watched the Spartacus TV show, so I don't know how he did on there. But in the movies, he never did. And Cole even brings up, I mean, this isn't even the first time he's been dropped into the 5th installment of a franchise.
Yeah.
There was Die Hard, he was in that. But, I mean, he's also been dropped into other franchises or wannabe franchises. Jack Reacher, he was in that. Didn't do such a great job. I, Frankenstein, didn't do good there, but nobody did. Divergent, he was actually okay in Divergent. Insurgent is another story, but that movie just sucked.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's going to get dropped into another one because he's going to be in Suicide Squad next year.
And Star Wars, I
what?
think.
I don't see that on IMDb.
Oh, no, that's a different beat now.
All these little himbos.
And he was in Unbroken, but only for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I still need to see Unbroken. I want to see it. And I think I was a little too mean to him in the past. I mean, I would have to look back to check the review, but I think I cut him a new one when I reviewed the 5th Die Hard.
In all
And
honesty, in his defense, the fifth Die Hard was written horribly. So
it was I really hated the fifth one, but
Yeah.
I also didn't care for the fourth one. But I mean, it's like, okay, well, here's the thing: is like, actually, I'm not a huge Die Hard nut anyway. But anyway, that gets on people's nerves too.
But Jai Courtney as
but
Reese.
Jai Courtney, I mean, he was okay, and I kind of liked what they did with the character. After all, he's in this movie, he's a slightly different character because he thinks he's going to go back to save Sarah Connor, and he has these great, noble ideas about his mission and everything. And then he shows up, and she's like, "No, I really just don't need you to actually save me. Stuff has changed now. I've been protected for a long time. I know the whole story. If anything, I'm here to save your ass."
Yeah.
And that's like, I mean, so he's kind of like really, emasculated right away, and so he does this, and then the movie does the weird thing where they make the people bicker, which I wish they wouldn't have done, but that's more with the writing. He did an okay job, nothing compared to Michael Biehn. I wish they would have tried to make him more like the character. For instance, I think in Salvation, Anton Yelchin, is it? He actually was at least similar. You could see him as a young Reese. This one, not quite, but it does so many things differently. Jai Courtney, he's not bad, but he is kind of bland. But there was a few things in this movie that were kind of bland. They were you're the action hero guy. You're the young action hero guy.
The way I put it is, it took me a hard time to get over that he wasn't Michael Biehn. I mean, because Michael just owned that character, so it took me a while, especially being such a big fan of the first two, going, Reese, okay, let's see Reese, but then my brain put him within the context of the rest of the film as it played along, and I'm like, yeah, okay, he's the Reese of this film. He fits within this film, So as far as this film goes, in this world that they put in, I liked his Reese just fine, more so than I thought I would. And Paul, what about you, sir? That first act of nostalgia, and then the Jai Courtney too. Well, since we're doing a double team here.
Sure. I think that you did need that beginning to set up that Back to the Future type vibe.
Yeah.
So I think it was important. That said, I'm going to say something about that a little bit later when I talk about this. But I think also too, it's kind of like a movie score to a sequel. It should be close but different, which I think it did a fairly decent job of.
Right.
There were basically two things I didn't like about the recreation. Is I was disappointed that Bill Paxton wasn't available to reprise his role. Yeah, I mean, he was in my he's in my sci-fi holy trilogy type of thing.
Because, yeah, but he's also like, isn't he also in his? I want to say he must be in his 50s by now, right?
They could do the whole the facial creation on him.
I was gonna say they made Arnold look young, so.
Yeah.
And Bill Paxton has aged. Bill Paxton actually has aged very well. So a little bit of makeup, a little bit of good creative lighting, and he could have probably been still the.
And he was a punk, so he could have had all sorts of stuff on. So it would have been fine. The second thing I didn't like about the recreation is it did kind of feel like two separate films.
Yeah.
I honestly would have been okay if they would have continued on that path and not had the new storyline. But I realize that it is important to have that new storyline because you're going to have people that are going to say, well, you guys didn't give me anything new, so why don't I just watch the first movie and it'll be a lot more better for me if I did.
Right.
As for the actor, Jai, I thought he did a respectable job playing Kyle. Because they had changed up at that time, they had changed up what the meaning of his role was, like Scott and some of the others have already stated. Because they changed that up, it was he had to take the role in a different direction. So I thought what he did was great. I thought he was the anchor to the past characters. Because of all the other characters, he was the one that truly felt to me like he had come from the original storyline and was dropped into it and said, okay, now you react to the way the things changed around you, whereas all the other characters were actually forcibly changed around him. So that's why I
Right.
thought he did a very decent job of making me believe that he was the Kyle Reese from the original, even though I think that Michael was a much better actor.
Yep, agree overall with all your points. And we are just joined here uh, we are just joined here by William as well. Hello, William.
Hi.
Hey, we're just talking here about the first act of Terminator Genisys and the nostalgia that they put into this first act, as well as Jai Courtney. What were your thoughts of those replicated scenes and of Jai as Reese?
Well, I had to rewatch Terminator 1 to kind of get caught up because it's been a while since I've seen it. All I can say is the CGI'd version of Arnold looked way better than the one in Salvation. That
Yes.
one
Yes, it did.
replica. It looks so realistic. All right, refresh my memory. Giles is the one who played it as John Connor, right?
No,
Yeah.
Jai Courtney played Reese.
Oh, Reese.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I haven't really seen any of his past work, so I can't really judge him, but he played, well, this is going to sound really bad. He was better than the John Connor actor in Salvation. That was Christian Bale, right?
Yeah, Christian Bale.
Well, nothing against Christian Bale. He's good in movies, but that one was not his highlight. Then, well, the real problem I had with the first act is how rushed it felt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it didn't make too much sense how the T-1000 was there, like, right after they killed the first T-800.
Yeah.
Because it didn't show him spawn in. It didn't show him, like, getting dressed and all that stuff. So it was kind of edgy. But I liked the character. Even though he didn't really have any lines, I liked that character. I've always loved that character. So, in total, I'd have to say that it was great.
Mm-hmm. And see, for me, being such the fan I had, I guess I had a little bit of tough time with the amalgamation part. I mean, it made sense, and I understand what they were going for, but for me, I wasn't into the movie at that point because I was such a big fan of the first two, seeing these replicated scenes with different people and the variation of it. I'm like, my brain was fighting with it for a while. I didn't think they were bad scenes. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I love the Arnie on Arnie action. I thought the liquid metal, and I think we can all agree, I think this either attests to how good the special effects were back in 91 or just how poor they did here, or they were trying to go for the same feeling. But the liquid metal T-1000 looked just as good in 91 as it did here, and that's not saying it's a bad thing at all. It looked good in 91, and it looked a little more refined, but I didn't really see any real difference as far as quality.
The quality is very subtle because in the original in the T2 Judgment Day version, they only use that morphing technique very, very quickly when he's transforming from one to the next. In this one, you actually see him moving a lot more. It's much more fluid, and it's and things you can actually see him. There's subtle ripples in him that you wouldn't see in the original one. So I thought, and a lot of people I don't think really tried to pay attention to that, but if you watch it the second time, look for it, especially in 3D.
But yeah, I'll back that up for sure. I got to back that up. I really think that the liquid metal effects were more refined. I'm not going to say better, but they definitely, there's some mind-blowing stuff. And again, my first IMAX experience probably contributed to that, but I was impressed. That bit where he comes out of the mirror, I almost applauded. I was like, holy shit, that is good CG, man. To me, personally.
Another thing that I liked about the nostalgic part was there was two things. One, I liked that they brought O'Brien back, but younger as a cop.
Right.
They kind of changed that character, which I've always thought he was an interesting character in T2 and in T3. And there was one part when they get to, I think it was a warehouse, right before the T-1000 gets killed by, what did you say it was? It was acid?
It was acid, yeah.
Yeah. There's the part where he comes through the window, and when Kyle shoots him, and he just looks over at him like, really? And then brings back the T-800, which was kind of interesting. I still don't understand how he did that.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Oh, well, yeah, because he merged with it, because it's basically the liquid metal merged with the CPU in it.
Yep.
And he took it over. He basically logged into that robot, and that was a setup actually for later on in the finale of the film. Basically,
Yep.
that's the whole reason why they did that part, was to explain, to set up so you get that in the finale. Yes, this, folks, is a spoiler room. In the finale, where you get Termy, who I totally saw it coming, but when Termy merged with the liquid metal, later on, that's why they had that scene in that beginning part, was so that you're like, oh, okay, so this is how that can work.
Plus, it also ties it into the third movie with the Terminatrix. She was able to control. Her technology is slightly different than the liquid metal technology, but it does link them.
It does, but we try not to talk about Terminator 3. So
I don't think the people who made this want to talk about Terminator 3 either. I think it seriously is one of those movies that tries to pretend that the third and fourth ones don't exist. In fact,
I disagree with you guys. I disagree, because I believe that they did a full job of combining them all. People just didn't notice it because they hated the third and the fourth movie so badly.
Then they get the date of Judgment Day wrong in this movie, because
they've changed it so many times.
Because they say in the movie, I think they actually even say in 1997 Judgment Day happened. I'm like, no, it didn't. They stopped it in T2, and B, in Terminator 3 it said it was in 2004 now.
Because it keeps adjusting. It keeps adjusting with our time and different Skynet.
We're dealing, folks. We're dealing with time travel, and it is the slippery slope, the timey-wimey,
wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
The wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey.
Sure, bring Doctor Who in.
Plot device.
Terminator did, so I might as well bring Doctor Who
How can you not, especially when you have a doctor in this film for all of 2 minutes? But when you get into time travel, yes, folks, Terminator has officially established that we're going with the multiple branching storyline rather than the single timeline. Which I don't know if that's good or bad, because in the first one they leaned more towards a linear timeline, and here we're going off the Star Trek Next Generation branching timeline, which means that those other timelines we had still exist, and they have to in order for the new timeline we're witnessing to happen.
Wait, Mark.
What?
Wouldn't that mean, well, it was either me talking to you or me talking to Paul on Facebook about, since they brought the first T-800 and then the T-1000, is there a possibility maybe in the future sequel that they might bring the TX back?
They could. More importantly, though, and Dawn brought this up, and I guess we can talk about it here now since it's led to that. We haven't established, and I think we're going to see it in the sequels, that who sent the original Terminator, now called the Guardian, way back to protect Sarah Connor, because we don't know who did that. We don't know who did that. We kind of suspect, but we don't know for sure. And also, you have to go with the branching timeline theory in this film in order for it to work. Because, again, we do have the amalgamation of the T-1000 showing up in '84, which he didn't do before. He showed up into the '90s after John Connor was 13 years old. But now we have him before he's born. So, I mean, and that's the part a lot of people I don't think are talking about, is the fact that, okay, yes, they did go back to '84, and I guess this was the part that my brain was having such a problem with, this nostalgia part in the beginning. Is, okay, if we're doing the nostalgia, why do you have the T-1000 back in '84? If you're going to be replicating the scenes, why did you put that in '84?
Basically, Skynet was doing what they should have done in the beginning, honestly, because honestly, okay, this the early parts of this movie, I gotta actually tip my hat off to it. Aside from the you can overlook it detail that he still had Sarah Connor's picture because we know it really burnt up and stuff like that, and it long before they traveled in time, but. Aside from that, in the beginning of this movie, this is the only one of the Terminator sequels, because I watched all 4 movies over again this last week. For stuff I was publishing on movieocrity.com.
Sure.
Plug. Anyway, and this is the only movie that actually got the original right in the respect that. Yeah, at the beginning in Terminator, they flat out say, "No, this is the final." It text crawl on Terminator at the beginning says, "This is the final battle." It says we not only was John Connor leading the resistance, they had basically won at this point, and then they found this time displacement, and then they sent him back. And, of course, then there was the sequel, Terminator 2, which is so fantastic that we don't actually question the fact that the movie doesn't make sense. I never understood why did they send him back when the kid was like 10 going on 13, and the movie does. But why did he send him back then? Because wouldn't it have made more sense just to send another T-1000 back to...
Okay, but
they sent more than one back because Skynet was aware of the timeline.
Right, and now it makes sense. And now it makes sense, actually. Right. It's like one of the only things in the movie that does make sense. But I thought that it actually got the setup for it. I'm like, wow, this actually gets the setup pretty much in accordance to the first film, which is something even Jim Cameron said, fuck it, let's have some fun, He just did it with the second movie,
My theory about sending the T-1000 after Kyle was when the first timeline played out, Skynet didn't know where Kyle was going to be.
They didn't know if he was going to be.
Right. But as soon as Skynet was able to get a hold of John and his memories, he very much knew where he was going to be, and so he then sent the T-1000 after him. As an added bonus to...
And that makes sense then, because it would also lead up to the whole enigma that they have of, we saw the machine fire up before our guys actually took the base with the time machine. It actually was fired off ahead of time, but we don't know how often or how many were sent back. So yeah, I mean, it does set up a lot of things. I guess for me, though, with all the nostalgia part, and maybe it was because I came off as Poltergeist, and Poltergeist had shoehorned references into the original when I thought the parts where they were getting their own original appealed better to me. I think that was the same thing here. Was for me, the nostalgia parts were a little tough to swallow because I love the original so much. So once they got over that, I could get into the movie a little more. Now let's move. We've already talked about Reese, and I think most of us are okay with him. I know Don didn't quite care for him because he was such a pretty boy. But within the context of the film, I thought he did an okay Reese. But here's the thing: is this film was light, and yes, I know we're talking about nuclear war, but let's go right to here because the thought just hit me. Just really quick, how they handled the nuking of the world.
Oh yeah.
Man, did I feel like this was like Disneyized nuking. And maybe it's because it was the PG-13, but Dawn, I almost wish they hadn't even shown the nuking.
Yeah.
I agree.
Wouldn't you say that we didn't even need that scene because Terminator 2, and folks, yes, this is how deep a fan I am, watching all the commentary and everything, the special effects guys actually had trouble. They were disturbed at how realistic they were making the nuclear nightmare scene for Sarah Connor's dreams. And it is disturbing, especially if you're a child of the 80s, but even you don't have to be. There's some pretty disturbing effects. And in here, we get, mushroom cloud. knocks over a bridge. Okay, move on. I'm like, is it me, or do we not even really need that? And by doing that, it's like that still doesn't have the impact. So why even show it? Am I off on that? Especially considering how well the first two handled it.
Not at all. I mean, it felt like filler.
It did. It felt
Nothing
like
more than filler.
It felt like they put it in there because Terminator 2 had a shot of Judgment Day, and because Terminator 3 had Judgment Day in its plot, they figured we have to show it. And I actually kind of like the motif of having the kid look out the airplane window. I liked that idea.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have any emotional impact. This film did not strike any of my emotions aside from when I would just like erupt in complete
Anger.
laughter. No, laughter. I was laughing my ass off in this movie. And I think it's the only reason that I kind of was okay with the movie, even though this is no classic. It's actually probably the least impressive film I've seen so far this summer. But it's honestly, it was so goofy. It was so stupid.
Yeah.
Every single moment. I mean, the dialogue, everything.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but
I was just laughing. So no, I don't think it had any emotional impact.
Yeah.
And I agree, that's a problem when you have nuclear war. I would not want to see the Terminator movies turn into another Roland Emmerich disaster porn.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, the minute I watched that scene, I'm like, I've seen this special effects shot almost somewhere before. Erase the mushroom cloud and knock down the buildings from an earthquake, and you get the same scene from San Andreas. And I'm like, this doesn't work for me, man.
Well, I guess they had an action scene on the Golden Gate Bridge later in the movie, but it's like it's one of those landmarks. If they're gonna show stuff blowing up, it's like, oh guys, we have to either show Statue of Liberty or the Golden Gate Bridge going under.
Yeah.
That's like the rule. They have to do it,
Don't live near any national landmarks during the disaster. Cole, what about you? That nuclear scene, compared to what we had seen in the first two, did they really need that? I mean, if they're going to it felt like a toss-off scene, like they didn't need to put it in there, and by putting it in there, they're just like, okay, nuclear bomb,
Man, I don't know. I don't necessarily know about that. I mean, again, I look up to you guys, and when I hear you guys talk about it, you make a convincing point. On the other hand, I mean, did the first film show scenes of destruction? I think we're only comparing it to the second.
Well, the first one showed the aftermath and
the aftermath, but that's why the first film works for me. I actually think the second film doesn't really follow all, and I don't have any complaints with the second film. But, those of you who know me well know that the first film I find to be one of the truly flawless films ever made, along with, in terms of 80s films, it belongs alongside Back to the Future, Beverly Hills Cop. I mean,
I'm right there with you.
It belongs in a fucking time capsule.
Sure.
And that came off of, I'm convinced that Jim Cameron was in the art department while Escape from New York was being made. You combine that with his experience, his negative experience on Piranha 2, and just being the overwhelmingly intelligent person he is, he didn't need to show the destruction.
Sure.
He could just come at it with mood. The second film, those scenes don't stand out to me, and if I'm right on my director's cut, there are more of them. Am I wrong?
Yeah, there are.
I think they even cut back on what they shot.
Yeah, and the special extended edition that was on 2 VHS tapes. I'm old.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
No, I haven't.
No, it's on the Skynet. It's on the Skynet Blu-ray too.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to eat up the whole show. We got a lot to talk about, but I loved the opening of this, and actually, I like how there are so many great scenes that are delivered before the director's name even rolls. I mean, all that stuff about Reese doesn't know what waitress means.
Yeah.
I've long been complaining that the world, for all of the special effects, and you guys can hear me mention this on another podcast. I don't remember why. Maybe we were talking about the Genisys trailer. But I mentioned how the bleakness of the first Terminator's post-apocalyptic world has never been duplicated ever in any of the sequels. The actual menace of it and the horrible bleakness of it, it was duplicated here. In the first few minutes, I really liked how the alleys that I believe it was young Reese was running through, man, all that looked very similar to the first film. It wasn't this flashy CG post-apocalypse world that, well, I guess wasn't in the second, but the third and the fourth specifically, where the threat feels light. It feels like computer arms reaching out of the sky. This one, in those opening moments, and not just because of the effects, but also because of the human emotions. And by the way, I love a lot of that stuff. I love the kid on the airplane. I love the grill out. Yeah, it actually worked for me. Now that I'm talking about it, I hadn't talked about it before.
That's okay.
I really love this film. I really do. I'm realizing that more and more as I talk about it. I like it.
Anyone else want to weigh in on the nuke scene at all?
I have two big things.
So, all right, go ahead first, Paul, and then.
All right. The two things I wanted to bring up is one, it does tie it into the third movie because they had those little nuclear explosions in that movie. And I know we don't want to talk about it, but also two, I think two is, again, I bring this up in other podcasts, it's the generational thing. I think they needed to do their to remind people what nuclear war actually is. How devastating it can be, because I don't know if a lot of people know what it's like if they didn't live through that kind of scare during the 80s and 90s.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't feel the scare. I looked at it going, that's a San Andreas shot.
Yeah, because it's a lot scarier to us because we know what it could have done.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. What about, what were you going to say, William?
Well, I thought it was mainly put in there because since there's a lot of action, in action movies there's always explosions.
Yeah.
It didn't really bother me, but it was expected.
Yeah. Tony, are you back with us?
Yeah, I am here just listening to all of your wonderful points in the movie.
What about you, sir? The nuke scene, real quick. Did it feel a little light compared to what we had seen in like the second one, and even the way they portrayed the post-nuke world?
I thought it was handled much, much better in the second movie because, like you said, you actually have emotions towards what's going on in that situation, and of course, the images were like really disturbing. They're really haunting. When it opened in Genisys, to me, I was fine with the scene there. The problem to me is that it was just rushed. The scene felt very, very forced. And then once they showed the title Terminator Genisys, I was just all like, well, that was a very forced opening, but let's see how the film goes. I think the film should just start off with like John Connor and Kyle Reese. I think it would have been better starting off there because that opening scene to me was just forced. But, it's like if they just had to put it there to kind of connect to what T2 did, but kind of alternate it. It's like, yeah, it was whatever to me.
All right, and so yeah, the nuke scene, special effects, we've touched on those. I want to get back to the characters now, because I have an issue, and Dawn and I started talking about this last night before the fireworks, and we have completely different views on this character. And I think it's because T2 hit such a chord with me and struck me so hard. So, and I'm talking about the character of Sarah Connor. In my review, I said that I thought she was possibly the weaker written of the characters. I think she was acted just fine. I had a problem with the way she was written, based off of how they had set up her character as far as supposed history of living with a emotionless robot, and here she is, and she still felt like a combination of normal girl and warrior when she's supposed to be prepared for major battle and prepared for major military functions, and yet I didn't get that feel from her. I mean, I think she was played fine, but I just didn't like the way she was written. I guess I was expecting a harder-nosed Sarah Connor now, even if she was younger, just because of how she has been raised or supposedly been raised by a Terminator to prepare herself for this battle. Am I wrong on this? Did we deserve a stronger, harder Sarah Connor, or
I have mixed emotions about about how her character was presented. Now, as for Emilia Clarke, I mean, I this is my first real exposure to her. I don't watch Game of Thrones, so I've never really seen her before in a movie. I didn't miss
Sure.
Dom Hemingway, didn't see that. So and looking at her, I'm like, oh, okay. And I liked, how they actually pointed out how short she is when they did the mug shots. That was actually really sweet. And honestly, again, in accordance to the original movie, this is actually closer to the original script. All these years, I had assumed that Sarah Connor was already well into her 20s, and it was only watching the movies again this last week. I'm like, oh God, no, she was supposed to be 19 years old in the first movie. I didn't even catch that after all the years of watching it until in the second one he says 29-year-old female. I'm like, wait, what? You mean in the first one? Now? Really? So I liked that she was young is actually, it's not what we're used to, but it's actually in accordance with the script.
yeah?
I didn't mind that she was not like the character from Terminator 2 because that was a Sarah Connor who built herself up as this warrior woman and by herself.
Yeah.
By getting involved with all these skeezy criminal elements and stuff south of the border and everything like that. That's what she was regarding it as just doing that as herself. And of course was also obviously, I mean, she might not have been obviously the Terminators were not a delusion, but she was psychologically damaged in that movie. This one is no, she's built herself up because she has had a protector who has helped prepare her for 10 years. So if anything, she's more like the John Connor from Terminator 2 than the Sarah Connor from Terminator 2.
Exactly.
I was okay with that. My only issue with the character, and I haven't seen her in anything else, is that I think whoever wrote the dialogue in the script
Maybe that's what struck me with it.
And again, it goes back to how I was mentioning the bickering between her and the Kyle Reese character. I just wanted them to give it a rest every time they started the bickering. Like, guys, this is it's an action movie. It's not moonlighting, okay? Stop. And there's an ancient reference for the kids in the audience. But they just started bickering back and forth. I'm like, guys, this is not that kind of movie. Like, I wish they would have. If they would have stopped that, it would have been like. Because I think that otherwise it makes, the Kyle Reese character and the Sarah Connor character see like, oh, look, they're scrappy. Well, no, they're not scrappy. They're supposed to be something else. And I think that was a problem. But as for how they presented her character, the physical appearance of her was a shock, and it was hard to get used to because we're so used to the Linda Hamilton character.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was kind of more in accordance, and considering the time frame we're dealing with now, it made sense to me, so I was okay with it.
Okay. Go ahead, Dawn.
Just to add to what Scott was saying about the difference, I had mentioned this to you last night too, Mark, was the Sarah Connor being more how I imagined John Connor would have been had the T-800 raised him, as had been kind of suggested in Terminator 2. But Sarah Connor, by the time you got to T2, you're not just talking about a woman who had built herself up with kind of skeezy accomplices, but you're also talking about a woman who had lost the man she loved and lost her child.
Right.
For all intents and purposes. and was very broken because of that. The only thing she had was to fight because she had
Right.
lost literally everything else she could
Mhm.
possibly that she had to lose except for her life.
It's-
So, and Linda Hamilton just did such a phenomenal job in that role.
Oh, yeah.
But this is a completely different Sarah Connor.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And she was 9 years old or thereabouts by when
The Guardian showed up.
when the Guardian showed up in 1973.
Yeah.
A lot of her growing and a lot of her base personality was already there, and he was a guardian to her,
Mhm.
and he taught her how to fight, and she taught him how to person.
Sure. Sure. No, I see your points greatly. William, what about you, sir? Did you have issues with how they had Sarah Connor in here, or do you agree here with Paul and Dawn?
Being a huge fan of T2 since it was the very first Terminator I ever saw when I was a kid. And I've seen Linda Hamilton in a few other movies. Seeing this new actor, I don't know much about her. Like Scott, I don't watch Game of Thrones.
Uh-huh.
I'm not into that kind of stuff, but she. The only thing I can really say about her is she's not a bad actor,
Right.
but she's not fantastic.
Mhm.
And the only positive thing I can say about her was she's pretty.
Nice.
You don't have to hide it,
You
William.
don't,
It was
you don't
when
have
she
to
was.
hide it, William. We're okay with that. That's fine. Tony, what about you? Our Sarah Connor in here. Did you like her?
Oh, I actually loved her. She was actually one of my favorite parts about Terminator Genisys, because yeah, they definitely changed her around, but I think personally for the good, because
Mhm.
I love that the Terminator was actually the one that was raising her, pretty much taking her under her wing, and I love how she was basically protecting herself, but while she's being a badass at the same time, she just she has like this growth to her character that really made it interesting. And I thought Amelia Clark, she was actually one of my worries when I went to this movie. I was like, oh God, how are they going to handle Sarah Connor? And Amelia Clark, to me at least, I actually thought she was fantastic. Like, I really thought she gave a fantastic performance to her character. And I think as far as characters go, she was actually the most interesting character to me. But that's just my own opinion on it.
No, that's okay. That's why we have all these opinions, and apparently I am completely wrong. Paul, what about you, sir?
Wrong.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I thought she developed backwards from the original plotline. So because in the original one, she basically had the strength, or she had to develop the strength to be this strong like mother and lover, and then she became the fighter afterwards. In this one, it reversed it, and it was a very interesting plot device in that she was the fighter, but she wasn't quite the lover or the mother. You could see that in the movie. She didn't react to John like you would expect. She didn't react to Kyle like you would expect, even though it did slowly develop. It actually, that point kind of irritated me because I wanted that romance so badly because I loved the original romance. And when they just kind of like twisted it, it was like, no, what are you doing to my fantasy love thing? But
well, they made it was such a strong part of the first film, and in this one they made a joke of it.
Yeah, but I'm hoping they'll correct that because of the next two movies. And I'm hoping that this experience makes it stronger. I think if they develop, the bickering, now they have more time to develop a relationship. That to me is kind of interesting. It's not all crammed into like, a bedroom scene at a hotel and, some scenes before that.
Yeah, but that scene had a fantastic piano score, which I listened to over and over to this day.
Definitely.
Cole, what about you? Final thought, weigh in here on Sarah Connor. How did you feel about her character, how she was portrayed and such?
Terrific. I loved it. I thought it very much was in the same universe as at least Linda Hamilton's performance in the first movie. And I have nothing to add. I mean, I really enjoyed her. I haven't seen her in anything, and she was totally believable as someone her age who would be raised by a robot in a grade B movie that happened to cost $150 million. I mean, that's what more can you ask from the lady?
Yeah.
But I do want to mention, everybody keeps talking about these sequels as if they're happening. I would not place any bets on that.
They absolutely are not.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. And I want to mention quickly, and just in case we don't get to it, that's one of my biggest problems with this film. Is it's made, and probably one of my only problems, is all of my problems with the film, such as the fact that they don't explain Arnold's origin, like how he got there, that sucks. The Easter egg, that sucks. All of my problems with this film are because they're planning on other movies that aren't fucking gonna get made, and that's what sucks.
Yeah, the setup part of it was one of the things that kind of stuck out with me. Was I'm like, okay, we've only got Matt Smith in here for a couple minutes, because we're setting it up for this. Like you said, we don't get an answer for who sent the Guardian back, because that'll be addressed in another film. That probably won't happen. We upgraded Arnold now, so we get our favorite Arnold as a liquid metal Arnold. Yes, spoiler room, ha! And sorry,
someone never told me there were spoilers in here. Damn it!
Yeah, I know, right? The setup parts were very obvious, and since we're talking about characters, just let's touch briefly on it.
Can I just really quickly say this though, because it goes right in with. I'm glad Cole mentioned it, because they're not going to get made. This is the third time this has happened, though. Terminator 3 was supposed to be shot back-to-back with another movie that was going to keep Nick Stahl and Claire Danes. That didn't happen. And they wound up rewriting it so many times that it became unrecognizable years later and was Terminator Salvation. That was supposed to be the start of a trilogy as well. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen. So in this one, they tried it again, and this didn't happen. The main difference this time is that they leave all these little plot threads. And I think if studios, this was considered going to be a trilogy, not necessarily one of these film universes like the MCU, like people talk about. But I think that you're going to get this a lot if studios are really going forward with these film universe ideas, that you're going to get a movie that comes out like, hey, it's the start of a whole new thing, and then all of a sudden, oh, it doesn't make it even as much money as the last movie, so never mind, never mind. It's going to be up to people. We're going to probably get the answers in, like, comic books and stuff, if anything.
Yeah, probably.
Which I'm okay with.
Which isn't bad. I mean, Buffy's still going on in comics, so
I still need to read season 9 because I was so pissed how season 8 ended.
So the final character I want to talk to, and then we'll talk about a couple other points real quick here because I don't want to go too late with this. But John Connor. For me, the twist would have been a lot better, and it was great hearing Dawn react to this.
Yes.
And you mentioned it already. I really wish they hadn't put the twist in the trailer. Who here watched the trailer?
I watched it.
Unfortunately, I did.
So they give away probably the biggest twist you could have in a Terminator series. They give it away. They give away that John Connor has been merged with a new type of Terminator technology, and he's now the bad guy.
They've done that a lot, too. What I noticed, again, watching these movies in the last week and seeing the trailers that were attached to them, I guess originally we weren't supposed to know that Arnold was a good guy in Terminator 2 until later on. So I guess that was a spoiler, because right away... as James Cameron, I think, said in a commentary, he says, yeah, we just never accounted that all these interviewers were going to come out beforehand and say, so you're a good guy in this one. So James Cameron was kind of kicking himself, saying, yeah, it was a dumb move. But,
even the movie poster spoiled the twist.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah. They all spoiled it. And Terminator 3 spoiled the Judgment Day thing. Terminator 4, the Salvation, spoiled the twist about Sam Worthington's character in that.
Yeah.
All these Terminator movies spoil it, but I agree. It would be nice if the marketing department would just say, You know, every 2 seconds something is either being chased or blown up in this movie. Maybe we don't need to throw that at them right away. Maybe we can let that be a "I am your father" moment.
And that's what I equated it to. It would have been like Empire and showing in the teaser trailer 6 months before the film comes out, Vader going, "Luke, I am your father." Well, fuck. Why do I gotta watch the film now? In this one, that was the problem I had. That and the flipping the bus 360 degrees in the air. But that's a whole other thing.
A few times.
A few times. But the main thing was that John Connor twist, I think, would have had more impact. And as Dawn mentioned, you said it was a pleasant surprise. That would have been a pleasant surprise for me. But the fact they threw it in there, I'm like, oh, come on. You took away the one reason I would have probably really hooked me into the film. And it was kind of, the film was entertaining, but I would have liked to have that mystery. Cole, did you know about that before going into the film?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't plan on seeing it. I thought it was going to be horrible, and I have no excuse for that, really. I'm a movie snob, and part of the other thing is, while I'm not dirt poor, I have to kind of set aside money. I can't go see Mad Max 17 times and then see Terminator. So I thought I would wait for video, even though I've seen every Terminator movie in the theater. But then I saw the link with James Cameron, and that whole spiel about Cameron thinks the new Terminator rocks or something to that effect. And I clicked on it, and usually during the summer season, I avoid everything. I recently re-listened to our Avengers podcast, and I think we review the marketing more than we review the movie. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I really think that we do, and I think it's cool that we made it about an hour and 15 minutes into this, and we haven't talked about the marketing, because it needs to be said that this is the worst marketed movie perhaps ever made. It's horrible. The trailers are horrible. The P&Rs, everything behind this movie is making you think it's a huge cheese fest. And if you think that it is, after you've seen it, your opinion is valid as anybody's. But my opinion is this needed to be marketed with some finesse. And sure as hell, revealing that John Connor is the new Terminator is not your best move. Any moron can see that. That is death to your film. Death. So I think, that sucks. On the other hand, honestly, Mark, that was the thing that got me into the theater. Right. Because as I said, I wasn't going to see it, and then I saw that, and it wasn't James Cameron praising it, because James Cameron is a businessman and a good one. I look up to him, but he knows this is a business.
Oh, yeah.
So he doesn't just go on there because he loves the movie. I'm not saying he doesn't. But he doesn't just go on there because he loves the movie. There is other shit going on, I promise.
Well, he's keeping the buzz till he gets the licensing back in 2019.
Exactly. I'll tell you, just very briefly, and then I'll wrap it up, man. That is the plot twist that got me into the theater, and it didn't disappoint. I mean, I think they pay it off good. In fact, I think we see, through John Connor's character, the most horror-oriented moments since the first film, which really is just a sci-fi slasher movie. Right. It really pushes it to the brink. I mean, there are shots of Connor in this film that are creepy. I mean, kind of gave me the creeps.
It did.
Cameron also, and I've pointed this out to a couple people and such like that, is that when Cameron said that he gave this movie kind of a thumbs up, I didn't actually read his exact quote. I was thinking but he kind of did the same thing when Terminator 3 came out. There was a lot of negative press around Terminator 3, and they asked Jim Cameron to say something nice, and he said something nice about Terminator 3. And I always assumed that there was some, like Cole says, there's something else at work.
There always is something else at work. It is a business. Tony, what about you? Did that ruin the kind of the surprise for you? I mean, seeing John Connor's Terminator was pretty cool, and the stuff they did with him. But the fact that you knew going into the film that he was going to be the bad guy, did that kind of ruin it for you a little?
Yeah, I would say a little, but as I was watching the film, I was saying to myself, even if I didn't watch those trailers, something would have told me that that was the actual twist. I don't know if it's because of those ugly scars that are on the character, but I think even if I haven't seen the trailer, something would have told me going, okay, I think the film is going to go in this direction. So I think either way, yeah, because I know about it, it did ruin a little bit for me, and maybe I would have been just slightly more surprised if I didn't watch it, but I think either way, it really wouldn't matter for me.
Sure.
And the twist itself, I was just okay with it, but it wasn't exactly like the most mind-blowing twist to me,
Sure.
to be honest.
And what about you, William? Did you think that was kind of the marketing in general for this film, and that twist for John Connor being revealed in a trailer ruin a little bit for you?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When I first saw the original trailer,
Uh-huh.
it automatically got me hooked because I'm like, oh, cool, this is gonna be like a nostalgic movie. And then when I saw the one with John Connor, it kind of made me feel like it was a whole different movie.
Yep.
So I was kind of like, oh, this is gonna. Yeah.
Paul, what about you? The marketing on this, would you agree that it was not good?
Actually, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Once it was done, it didn't become of what happened. It became more of how and why did it happen.
Sure.
And as for a twist, it really wasn't going to be a twist because early in the beginning, he was attacked.
Yeah,
And so
there
you
was.
have to
Well, that's the
wonder.
thing. There was the attack, so it doesn't really give. I mean, when he showed up, I heard a few like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Really? Didn't you just see Doctor Who grab him by the mouth beforehand?" And
Yeah.
Now I did like what they did with Skynet, and that'll be the last character I guess we can talk about. The last point I want to bring up is one of the things I did enjoy. One of the positives, and again, I gave this a positive review. I gave it 3 3/4. I said it was still an entertaining film. I had to remove my love for the first 2 films in order to kind of enjoy it, but as a standalone film by itself, I thought it was entertaining. But one of the things I did like about it, and I'm glad they did it, was how they handled Skynet itself with how we're all plugged into devices nowadays, now making it this big social network launch made so much sense. That part of it was perfect. Don, wouldn't you say that making Skynet that life Genisys, Genisys software, that actually fit and was like probably the most appropriate thing for current times for people?
Yes, I do agree with that. I have lots of other thoughts on the whole Skynet with the time travel thing too.
Sure. We can talk about it.
And the alternate dimensions and alternate timelines. Since we brought up Doctor Who.
No, go ahead. That's why I want to talk about Skynet last, because it's the most kind of complicated character out of all of them, I guess.
So when Matt Smith, Alex, attacks John Connor when Kyle Reese is going in the time vortex bubble thingy, and he's going back in time, Kyle Reese is protected as the dimensions shift and the timeline changes. Well, using that theory that anybody caught in that timeline shift is going to be protected as they travel between the different
worlds, right?
times and the different dimensions. Every time somebody travels back or forward or whatever, you're creating all new timelines, and pretty soon you've got all these layers of timelines, and somehow they're all connected and somebody's watching them.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory,
Wow.
you've got Skynet as this started out as this rather basic computer system in the first one,
Mhm.
based on the CPU chip from the very original Terminator,
Right.
evolving into Terminator 2 and what the Dyson, Miles Dyson created, evolving into the T-1000, going on. Now, in theory, if we're going on this theory that the time traveling keeps happening back and forth, and Skynet keeps evolving, somebody's watching what's happening from all these timelines and learning from them and evolving and Skynet keeps evolving into something new and different every time it gets foiled.
Right.
Hmm.
Yes, so Skynet is the constant in any of these timelines, either the crap-ass sequels or this remake or the first two films. Skynet,
Exactly.
in some form or another, stays consistent. Skynet spreads itself. Skynet becomes self-aware. Skynet says, screw you humans, I'm making a world that the aliens from Matrix won't even want. And
Yeah, I never
succeeds.
got what their big takeover plan was because their future's a shithole. I never got that. So
Well,
I never
no, it was-
understood.
Okay, so we're digging deep here with Skynet. The fact that in this timeline, it's more relevant to the modern age where everybody's connected and interconnected, which I loved and thought it was pertinent. So let's go further with this. Skynet is pure evil and could be the devil. And
Oh no! Don't do that. Some Hollywood executive will listen to that and say, "Yes." Don't do
It's
that.
the embodiment.
Don't
No,
give
not
me-
the
don't
devil,
give me-
but
don't give
not
me-
the devil, but the embodiment of evil or the embodiment of man's flaws.
Don't do
And
this.
it's
They're gonna sell the
consistent
rights to
across the
Pureflix. They're gonna sell the rights to Pureflix. We're gonna get. You know what? It's already bad enough because in this movie, John Connor already kind of looks like Kirk Cameron.
Oh.
But don't do this to us, okay?
Wow. But no, but you're right. Skynet is the consistent one throughout all of these timelines. So is Skynet more than just a program being developed by human Tony, or is Skynet more and the overseeing, the all-seeing of all timelines something more?
I think it's something that's the all-seeing of all timelines, because like you said, it is very consistent with all of these Terminator movies, and I like the fact that it's pretty much speaking of what's true about our own reality in terms of us, we're on our technology, we're all on our webcams doing the spoiler room, so we have technology to thank for that. Thank you, technology. And and I just liked how the overall Skynet played out. Like it was in control of why all of these situations are happening with all the timelines and the situations you would pretty much see in all of the previous Terminator movies. So that was definitely the aspect about this movie that really had me intrigued, and that was actually the surprise right there. Like, unlike the John Connor twist, that was the twist that actually made me kind of go, holy crap, that was actually really good.
The talking, self-aware Skynet. I like that part of it, and as Don alludes to, too, as someone watching all over, the ironic part of Skynet, the embodiment of Skynet being played by Matt Smith, which if you're a Whovian, that fries your brain right there.
See, he's just regenerating, that's all.
He's just regenerating. Paul, what about you? This idea, I like this what Don's proposed here. Skynet actually being the all-seeing of all timelines. Is it the computer program figuring all different alternatives, or is it one of those where it's computed all of these, or is it something more?
It's something that I didn't actually factor in. I just looked at it from the standpoint of that it is technology. It's a representation of our current, the level of technology, because underlying the theme of, or underneath all of the Terminators is this is this notion that you should watch out for technology. If you let technology get to a point where it starts to take things over, or that we start to give it more things to do, it will eventually lead to the downfall of mankind. So I think this is just the current thing, saying, hey, we're letting social media take over, and you're going to hate me for this, but this is again another tie-in to the third movie.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, because they represented that in the third movie.
Yeah,
If they did, that's the only thing that where Dawn's theory is like blowing my mind, and it actually makes sense and everything. I actually hope it's not true, because it would kind of go in with the third movie's really pessimistic message, where, oh yeah, that thing about no faith but what we make for ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of hope it's not true, but it does. It's blowing my mind, and it does make sense.
It does. William, what about you? William,
Well, I didn't mean it
go
that
ahead.
way.
Sorry.
Okay, wait. Hold on a second. Well, wait.
Dawn.
Dawn, what did you mean then? Because just
Well,
so I can...
mean, there's certain constants that have been happening all along
Right.
through everything. Skynet becoming self-aware is inevitable. Kyle Reese going back in time to hook up with Sarah Connor and make John Connor, baby John Connor. That's inevitable. John Connor defeating Skynet in the future is inevitable. Those things are all constants. It just seems to me like Skynet is monitoring all these different timelines, trying to find ways to make this one John Connor defeating Skynet.
So,
He's trying to, because John Connor ultimately defeats Skynet, and Skynet keeps coming back to try to make that not happen.
So as we're watching the movies kind of do a trial and error of trying to keep things going, we're also watching really Skynet's trial and error of trying to keep things going.
That's
Dawn,
the
Dawn,
theory I like.
You're blowing my mind right now.
That's a really interesting theory.
This is an excellent theory right here.
That's a really interesting theory.
What do you think, William, about this Skynet actually all these movies being Skynet's trial and error?
Well, I think I mentioned this to either you or Paul after watching it. The AI, of course, that was shown.
Sure.
And the fact that Skynet's kind of connected to this, that, the other, and people, and almost all over the world. Do you know what it reminded me of? The Red Queen from Resident Evil.
Yes. I was actually going to make a crack about that later.
You mentioned that, and when you said that, I had that exact thought when I watched it as well. Was that this is similar to the Red Queen program in Resident Evil? So Red Queen, maybe Skynet. If there's zombies, that's another timeline right there.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
You could be. Wow, we're linking all of these. Cole, what about you, real quick, on this idea of Skynet being the overwatcher of all these timelines, and what we're seeing is his trial and error?
Well, I like that theory. I think Dawn has a great idea, and I think that plays out well. Although, when I was watching this film, I didn't really think of any of the other sequels. I thought of the first film and how this movie answers all the questions, well, a lot of the questions I had with the first film, such as, if there's a time machine, how is it that only two entities come back to wage this epic war? How is that set up? Where is the time machine? How is it that John Connor is one and they still have to send somebody back? And how does that all play out sequentially? Those are questions I had when I watched the first film.
Sure. And
they play out that sequentially before the credits have even ended, which I think was great, just in terms of setting up, a timeline or future timelines. But also, somebody had mentioned the reason, why does Skynet do this? Like, I think it'd be funny for one of these futuristic movies, and this is just, I'm being totally humorous, but, to show the war with the humans and show us all, living devastated in these cities, And then in like a subplot, you see these machines like cleaning the ocean or replanting forests. Because these machines really don't seem to have a master plan. They seem to think we're a virus. It's not just the Terminator. You can put Matrix in here or whatever.
Yeah.
They just nuke everything.
Yeah, they don't really have. Yeah, they don't really have any plan beyond their own continued survival. And how long can machines really last? You can say that about Matrix or this. Yeah.
Exactly, man. And one final statement to tie into what Don was saying, and I think Don had a brilliant idea. But I also like how Arnold understands the philosophy of time travel in this movie. I think that's really unique. I mean, how well it's done is debatable, but they're trying, I thought that was really cool. But in short, I agree with Don. I think that's a great idea and certainly applies to all 5 movies.
Well, wow, yeah, Don, you just suddenly you gave relevance to all the other films. Oh my God. With this, the whole trial and error thing. Here's go one thing further. You guys talk about purpose. What about this purpose? And now not only have we tied in a couple other films, we'll tie in the whole Matrix thing idea to this, because the Matrix had a similar theory of the quirk, the Neo being the flaw in the programming. Here we have John Connor being the flaw in the grand scheme of Skynet, because he's always defeating him. What if Skynet's sole purpose is to be the only existing sentient being on the planet, and his whole purpose is just using the robots as pawns, and he wants to annihilate all life, or it wants to annihilate, I automatically said he. Look at me. Skynet, well, because he's Matt Smith, what do you expect?
So what you're saying is Skynet is Thanos.
No, but think about it. What about that motivation of him? It just wants to exist itself. It doesn't like these humans. It doesn't like any other life being around. It wants to exist by itself, and that could be its master plan. And
Skynet is the ultimate emo. Or leave me alone. You don't understand me anyway.
You have some nukes.
I could just imagine Skynet talking to his parents going, "You're never going to understand me, Dad."
Matt Smith comes out and goes, "You never understand me, Dyson. You never understand me." Which is another, it shows you a different timeline than what the originals were, as well, in that we have an older Dyson child in '84. So, I mean, there is that as well. Or not in '84, well, they go ahead in that's right, they jump ahead to, was it 2017. So, okay, so he's older then, so my brain's mixed up the two timelines. So they go to 2017, so yeah, I guess he would be old enough then. His kid would be old enough by then, so I guess that does make sense. Never mind on that part. Well, the timey-wimey stuff really can start messing with your head. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. I think we've explored this film quite a bit. On the whole, I don't think this film is as horrible as everyone thinks, and we'll just get people's final thoughts on the Terminator Genisys, and our predictions whether or not we will actually see a sequel. I think we all agree we probably won't, but let's just say real quick our final thought on this film, and if and when there is a sequel, what's kind of the one thing for sure you would like to see answered or brought into the next film, should there be one. So Cole, let's start with you. We'll go right down the line. Cole, what about you? Your final thought with this film, and then just what you would like to see if they do make a sequel.
Well, that's a fantastic thing to end with. And my final thoughts on the film were I really enjoyed it. It really did feel to me like T3. It felt like Terminator 3 to me. And I like Salvation a whole hell of a lot. And I can watch Terminator 3 as a time waster. But My apologies to everyone involved, but the film is pretty bleak and it's kind of trashy. But I really feel like this was T3. I could, in fact, this could be T2, and I love Terminator 2, but I could watch the first film and then watch this film.
Right.
And they would be just fine. I mean, that'd be a great 4-hour afternoon matinee. I really enjoy it, and I recommend it.
Sure.
You know, give it a shot. Boy, in terms of what I'd like to see in a future film, and I will never get it because the way this stuff works is only once in a while somebody as smart as Christopher Nolan is able to create an entire arc and end it on his own terms.
Right.
It never happens. It never happens. It's happened once with the Dark Knight trilogy. And that is the only time it's happened. And I don't think that even the most hardcore Batman fans really realize what Nolan accomplished was he took a franchise and it's finite within itself.
Right.
You can go in, watch his work, and end, and feel good about it, and feel good like, wow, Bruce Wayne fucking rules. He made it. It's great. We will never get that with Terminator, but that's what I'd like to see. I would like to have the feeling that I felt when I saw Linda Hamilton drive into the storm clouds for the first time when I watched that on video with a double bill with Beverly Hills Cop when I was 6 years old. You know, I would like to have a sense of finality and accomplishment and not just, hey, we want your money for Terminator 6.
Right. And Dawn, what about you? Final thought with this film, and if they do make a sequel, what's the one thing that you'd like to see from it?
Okay, so final thoughts. I didn't mind the film. It ended up, the more I thought about it, the more we've talked about it, the more I examined my feelings toward it. I really didn't mind the film. I'm really annoyed that they destroyed my favorite romance, but hey, you know, they're still the original. I can live with that. But I really didn't mind the film. I actually think that when I go back and revisit it in the future, I may actually end up liking it quite a bit. And I'm okay with that. For what I want more in the future, I want to explore Skynet itself more. I want to learn. I want more Matt Smith, but also I really want to know more about it, how it keeps adapting. I definitely want to explore more of that because, as I said, we've got the constants. We know our favorite characters already.
Right.
If they're smart, they won't change up the basic core of these characters too much. But what we've never really explored is Skynet, and I'd like to explore Skynet more.
Awesome. And Paul, what about you, sir?
All right. My major thing is internet. Stop pretending you have a time machine and announcing the movie as a flop a month before it's released. I'm just saying, stop it. Watch the film, then make your own decisions. As for the future, I really hope they fix the relationships. I really hope that they do have the sequels because as long as they make them, I will be back to watch them. I love the universe. I love being in that universe just to experience it. And even if I might not like the movie for its technical aspects, I still love the story.
Cool. And Scott, what about you, sir?
Like I said, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. The first half to two-thirds of this movie, I would say, basically right up until they have the Genisys press conference. No, actually, wait, no. Until they do the helicopter chase. Basically, until they do the helicopter chase. Everything up to that, it felt like if they had rebooted the Terminator franchise in the 90s as one of those cheesy Van Damme movies, which I love, those movies.
Sure.
So I had a good time with this movie, but I was laughing at it all the way through. I was laughing hysterically. At the same time, like I said, the beginning of the film gets a lot of elements right, and it actually has some interesting ideas. If they did make the sequels, which again I don't think they're going to do, even though the people have signed on, they're just not going to invest that much money into them again. if they made him, the thing I would like to see develop more, since it was the film's weak point, was the relationship between Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor.
Right.
It's not going to be the same relationship as the original, which Dawn rightly points out is one of the great, iconic, tragic romances. Because it's not a tragic romance. He's kicking, still kicking it.
Yes.
But since they kind of mishandled that this time around with all the bickering, I would actually like to see that developed into something a little more meaningful and stuff.
Sure.
And I would like them to stay away from what I thought was kind of a cheesy third act. That was even too cheesy for me.
And Tiger Dude, what about you, sir?
For my final thoughts, I surprisingly liked the movie. Like, I'm still shocked on how much the movie did not suck, in my opinion. I really Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, Terminator, he's great. Loved Emilia Clarke, Jai Courtney, he's average, but most of the
Sorry, that's just like what his thing
I
is.
enjoyed I pretty much enjoyed the alternate timelines, even though there's some that I'm still kind of processing. But at the moment, when I walked out of the theater, I was like, I actually liked the movie. I thought it was actually good. And I'm sure if I rewatch the movie, I'll like it more because I'm pretty sure some of the things I didn't quite understand, I'll understand it more. So Terminator Genisys, good movie in my opinion. And as far as I would like to see in the future, what Don said, I would like to see them explore more of Skynet. Maybe they could answer the question of who sent Pops in 1984. I would actually like to know the person behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's more. I just can't really think of it right
that's
now.
Okay.
But that's what I pretty much would like to see in the future.
Cool. And William, if you're there, sir, what are your final thought kind of with this film and what you would like to see should they make a sequel?
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I had very few little problems with it, which we've already explained.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, yes, I've heard a good handful of bad things. So I'm thinking there's maybe a 40% chance of a sequel.
Sure.
But if it happens, it happens. I'll still go see it. But I have to say, it's an improvement since Salvation. And this is a thought that I've had for a while since the third one, since they were doing different choices with Terminators, and they never touched on this, and I hope this does not sound racist, but I think they should have a black Terminator.
Good point. No, that's not racist at all.
That's actually kind of interesting.
Have him more of like a really tuned up, skilled fighter type, hunter like thing. You know what I mean? Really.
Well, they originally were going to have O.J. Simpson, but they didn't think he could pull off a killer.
Oh my God!
In the original, yeah.
That's
looking back on those movies, very awkward.
No,
that's
not
really
kidding.
that's
O.J.
true.
Simpson
That's
was,
true.
Yeah.
You just blew my fucking mind.
One of the studios that, when they brought the original Terminator to the studios, one of the original studios said, well, we like it, but not this Schwarzenegger guy. He's not going to go anywhere. We want to get O.J. Simpson as the Terminator. And they said, and the guy, and Cameron and company said, no, we're not doing that because no one's ever going to buy him as a killer.
Hey, will we buy Nicolas Cage as the Terminator?
No, please, no.
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, the Terminator whose weakness is that all he can do is emote.
I'm gonna be back.
You've
I'm
been
gonna be
caged.
back. and for me, being so Terminator 2 being such one of those films for me, I will say yes. This film did not suck. I think some of the criticism that it's falling on it, I think is unjust. And this is coming from someone who really loves number 2.
Yeah.
And didn't think
I love that movie.
really it it's one of those things that's hard to describe, but you know my passion for films. This one is I'm very passionate about, and I will say that even with the problems that I kind of had with the replication of the nostalgia parts, I liked where they were going with this. I understand what they had to work with, and within the context of this film by itself, uh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was entertained. There was a little more humor than I thought there was going to be in it, but that's okay. I didn't mind that. I liked the idea of Skynet still evolving, and with Dawn's theory, that just really puts a lot more things in perspective and could open up a lot more things for them to do in the sequel. I would really like to see more of Skynet than just hearing about it go self-aware. Just hearing about it, oh yeah, it launched nukes. See it evolve a little bit to that bit, which they did leave it open at the end of this film, at the end of the credits, for something like that. Now, whether or not that's going to happen, well, it's not doing well at the box office, and even though they signed on for other sequels, we'll have to see. You never know with Hollywood. They may still try to take a chance. I will say that it's a film that you can experience on the big screen, especially if you're just a casual sci-fi fan. You'll probably enjoy it. Dialogue's a little cheesy and some of the special effects over the top, but you get that in any film nowadays. But overall, long story short, yeah, it's an entertaining film. It does feel like a true sequel to the second one, even though it was a little light for me. On the whole, it's entertaining, which I didn't expect it to be, really. So, I had really low expectations, and it did go above those. All right, that's the most that I can really say about it. So we'll wrap it up here real quick. Everybody go down the line and pip your stuff quick. Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Cole, wow, what's that? Wow.
Who's playing the music? Rock on, man. Rock on.
It's Skynet from the future.
Jesus Christ.
Skynet is.
That was me. I'm so sorry. Weird.
Sounds like a ringtone or something.
That was
Skynet's listening
I'm
to
so
us.
Sorry.
All
But
right.
you want to cue me again for editing purposes?
Not at all, Cole. Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, brother. All right, yeah, Cole, you can find me on Facebook. I make horror movies, and I've got cool stuff coming out over the next 6 to 12 months, funding, but Shadows and Lovers Productions on Facebook, Horror Roar, ROAR, on Facebook, or Cole Meredith. All I do is talk movies, so even if you don't know me, you want to talk movies, get a hold of me, because I make them. You're an actor. You never know. ColeMeredith, man. And I just want to say, in closing, there is a way for another movie to get made. Arnold could just put down his money and, fund it.
Make it himself.
Yeah. But anyways, thanks for having me. This was fun.
You bet. Dawn, go ahead.
You can find me in theaudience.net.
Fantastic. Paul?
When I'm not trying to build a time displacement device to get back into the 80s, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and WordPress at Forsaken Film Reviews.
Nice. Scott, go ahead.
You can find me at movieocrity.com. That's where I put all my reviews and any podcasts I'm on and such. We even just started, just before I started recording this, started posting a look at all 5 Terminator movies. So, I mean,
nice.
if this wasn't enough for you, if you didn't hear me talk enough here, you can read more of my shit over there. And, also I have my web series, Movieocrity, which the best place to find that is at vimeo.com/channels/Movieocrity. I've got 3 seasons of it, including a recent episode all about the Mad Max ripoffs, including the Empire of Ash quote-unquote trilogy.
Yes.
And you can check all that out over there. And
Awesome.
I try to keep busy because it keeps the dark thoughts away.
Tony, go ahead, sir.
You can find me at youtube.com/22tigerdude. You could like my Facebook page at facebook.com/22tigerdude. Follow me on Twitter at tigerdude22. You could follow me now on moviepilot.com/tigerdude22. And you could also follow me on Instagram at 22tigerdude. Oh, and one more thing. Hasta la vista, baby.
And William, do you have anything you want to throw out for people can see your stuff? Or
Well, other than Facebook, which if you just type in my name, you're probably not going to find me right off the bat. I have a Twitter. I've started using it a lot more. It's Stacker3. That's all you have to type in. Stacker.
Okay.
My
Awesome.
YouTube, however, I am delayed with movie reviews, so I have like about 18 that I need to upload, but Proton and Analuski too.
which we have a link for on the Special Mark Productions site, as well as everybody else's on here. So make sure you check out everybody's sites on here as well. You can find links on the Friends of Special Mark Productions right on our homepage for all of these fine folks' sites. And Special Mark Productions is where you can find my stuff as well. If you're still inclined, we have the archive of the podcasts here, both the Hangouts we used to do and the audio-only versions as well. There's links there for my Final Cut reviews, as well as the stuff I do for We Live Film. And there's going to be some more stuff going up there soon, too. Always visit back. Make sure you subscribe, go to iTunes, comment, please, and rate us. We'd love for you to do it. And also go to podcastland.net if you can. Go to the TV and movie section, look for the Spoiler Room, and give us a vote. They look for a top podcast every month, and it'd be nice to get there 1 month. So check it out there. If you want to email the Spoiler Room, if you have an idea for the Spoiler Room, we'd love to hear from you. Check it out at spoilerroom.smp. That's S as in Sam, M as in Mary, P as in Paul, at gmail.com. So spoilerroom.smp at gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Spoiler Room, where the conversation is fresh, but we do spoil the movies. And as Tony promptly said it, hasta la vista, baby.